that executive order is even good. And I think that's what Trump wants to go for. His lawyers have probably told him, you can drag this out for years.
Because there's this reporting from the Washington Post that the former president's lawyer is telling these former aides not to comply with subpoenas from the January 6th committee. Obviously, it's one thing to actually fight a subpoena in court. It's another to completely ignore it at the direction of the former president, isn't it?
He has no authority to do that. Each of those people have to decide what they can do, and they can't say, well, I'm acting under the orders of former President Trump. That's no order. I mean, it is meaningless. So they can find themselves in contempt. And Anderson, again, this is where the House has failed to get itself in order to prepare for this. There are remedies for this. There are housekeeping things they can do and make these subpoenas through their inherent contempt powers have some meaning.
Well, why wouldn't they do that if that was a possibility? I mean, what is the inherent contempt power that you're talking
about?
Boy,
I don't know. I cannot figure out. It is a no-brainer. Ted Lieu introduced in the last Congress and again in this Congress a resolution that would amend their rules that would give a fine power up to $25,000 per incident and up to $100,000 per particular material, which can be repeated again and again. It could really add up. And this is just amending their rules. They don't have to go to the Senate. They don't have to go to anybody. And I just don't get it why they don't brace themselves to deal with this kind of behavior.
How significant are the new subpoenas for this, the so-called Stop the Steal organizers from the January 6th Select Committee? I mean, it's worth noting one of the organizers claimed he worked closely with Republican congressmen in planning the rally at the Capitol. Of course, whether or not he was being honest, who can tell with these people?
I think they're important. I think they're being very thoughtful, the subpoenas they issue. And if these people indeed comply, and I don't know why they wouldn't, they will get more information as to how this thing really came down, and that's what they're clearly trying to get hold of.
Yeah, John Dean, I appreciate it tonight. Thank you. Now, his former Watergate counterpart, in a sense, Dean and political analyst, author, and investigative reporter, Carl Bernstein. Carl, thanks for being with us. So the Senate Judiciary Committee report is the most comprehensive look so far at the former president's assault on democracy, asking the Justice Department 9 times to undermine the election result. I'm wondering what your takeaway is.
Well, that there has been a coup led by the President of the United States to undermine the Constitution and possibly and likely a criminal conspiracy as well. And all of these things that are laid out in the report are uncontrovertible evidence of the President of the United States trying to overwhelm constitutional responsibility, to subvert and evade the laws of the United States and the Constitution of the United States. But I think we also need to look at something. We are looking at an ongoing cover-up led by the Republican Party to keep the people of the United States from knowing what the hell happened in these terrible moments in which the President of the United States, for the first time in our history, tried to subvert a legal and free election. And now we are heading toward the next election in which these same forces are planning to subvert the election. So we are in a constitutional crisis.
You have Chairman Durbin saying we were a half step away.
We're in it.
You think we're in it?
We're in it because look toward the next election.
Right.
Look at what has happened already and look at the country itself. The most significant thing perhaps is not just the coup attempt and the coup by the President of the United States and the Republican Party going along with it, but almost half of the adult voters in this country from all of the polls and what we saw in the last election are willing to go along with these lies.
Yeah.
So we are in a kind of civil war in this country.
Well, not only people, voters, the base, supporters willing to go along with this lie, you have Senator Grassley's, rebuttal from the GOP saying nothing to see in that meeting, that Trump, he listened to his senior advisors and followed their advice and recommendations. I mean, that's an insane interpretation of an insane meeting which took place with the former president.
Chuck Grassley was once a really honorable man with a terrific record serving his party.
Wow, that must have been a long time ago.
And it is a long time ago because what he is doing is a disgrace, as his colleagues are doing. What the Republican Party is doing today is unprecedented in our history. going along with subversion of the Constitution of the United States. This is not about a set of unknown facts. It's very clear to these people in the Republican Party what happened. They want to win and prevail in this civil war at any cost. And the cost to the country is something that we have not seen in this nation since 1860 to 65. That's the only period in our history we can look at as to when the forces of undemocratic, to say the least, but when the forces gathered to undermine our unity as a country and what we stand for and who we are in a similar period right now in which, and that's what we need to be covering as well in the media. What is going on in the country that is allowing this to happen? We need to find out what's on people's minds that they are willing to go along with this.
Well, also, look, I mean, who hasn't become somewhat numb to this constant assault? And that's, I mean, that's how psychopaths are able to, remain free and
Yes,
succeed in society because they wear down everybody else around them and just are shameless and have no,
Let me say, so you just raised a really interesting point. You used the word psychopath. Let's say that perhaps we have a sociopath or a psychopath who has been the president of the United States and seeks perhaps to be the next president of the United States and has ignited this movement. We have never had a period in our history when 45% of the people in our country have said, oh yeah, I'll go along with this psychopath, I'll go along with this sociopath. We need to be looking at these facts as well as the coup and what this individual did. We need to look at why are our people, so many of our people, following this sociopathic undermining of our democracy. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, it is. There's been a lot of comparisons, obviously, to Watergate, but just looking back to the darkest days of the Nixon administration.
The system worked in Watergate. Richard Nixon left office. He agreed to leave office. He didn't start a coup at the last minute to say, I'm going to stay here, I'm not leaving, don't let that chopper take off on the lawn. He said, I have to go. He acknowledged that he had to go. Whatever he thought of the facts, he knew that there was a constitutional process in place and that he had lost and that the Supreme Court had made him turn over his tapes and that he was no longer, and he would have been impeached and convicted in the Senate. What made him go was his knowledge that his own party was going to convict him. Now, Donald Trump's party has not convicted him in the Senate, is not about to convict anybody, but rather is intent on covering up this horrible, horrible coup and undermining of our democracy led by this person and now endorsed, enabled by one of our two political parties. We've never had anything like it in our history.
Yeah. Carl Bernstein, appreciate it.